Hello, my friend. Welcome to Fear into Faith. This is our Miracles, Signs, and Wonders episode. My name is Summer Day, and I have a man here today who was healed and had a face-to-face encounter with Jesus. Welcome to the studio, Devin Schubert, best dressed guy in the room. Come on.
Thanks, Summer. Honored to be here.
Seriously, look at you. This is happening. Do you always dress this great?
I always wear orange.
You always wear orange?
Always wear orange, and when I do dress up, I make sure it's orange.
Okay.
This is the only suit that you will ever see me wear.
This only orange suit. Okay, well, I want you to tell everybody a little bit about yourself and where you're from. But first, I think we have to address why orange?
Yeah, so I grew up in a high school called the Freeport Pretzels. I know it's pretty intimidating.
Literally, they were called the Pretzels.
Yeah, we were the Pretzels. And so our colors were orange. And I started off playing basketball and had some orange shoes, and it just stuck with me. Couldn't leave it. Stop
it right now. That's hilarious. I have a similar story that's totally different. By similar, I mean not the same at all. I had to pick a number between 1 and 100 when I was 9, and then I did, and I beat out all the other kids, and the guy was like, that was the exact number. Now, I'm not going to tell you what the number is, but I have always used that same number anytime anybody wants me to pick a number. Yeah. So orange stuck. I've got my favorite number. We're good.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, people want to know a little bit more about you besides you're the guy who dresses in orange. I love it. So tomorrow I'm going to see you in orange.
You will.
Okay.
Get all the orange outfits.
I can't wait. I'm so excited. That's fabulous. Okay, so tell us just like where are you from, a little bit about you.
Yeah, so I'm from Iowa. I grew up in Dubuque, Iowa, and then moved to Des Moines. And I have 3 adopted children. I'm divorced 9 years ago. I've planted 7 churches, 9 ministries.
Stop, don't go so fast. You've planted 7 churches?
I have, yeah.
I did not know this one about you, even though you're my friend. We're new friends. Planted 7 churches, all in Iowa?
All in Iowa.
Amazing. Wow, over how much time span?
12 years.
7 churches, 12 years, and then what was the next part? I cut you off.
9 ministries.
9 ministries. Okay, unpack these 9 ministries.
So a lot of them ended up being youth ministries because the church would switch focus from being outward focused to being inward focused. And so I ended up taking a lot of skateboarders, druggies, and they didn't like them in the church. So I would take them away from the church, and we would go to another facility, and we would just start a ministry then, and God would continue to bless it.
Oh my goodness. You probably have some really powerful stories from that ministry stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, before we move on, share one skateboard druggy kid.
Yeah.
Like, what's your favorite?
Yeah, my favorite one is actually when I got let loose from the church was because they were smoking outside while we were reading the Bible, and kids were literally getting saved while the elders were walking out of the church and saying, well, you guys can't be here.
You can't be here.
And they gave me a choice. You can either stay at this church and work with the kids in the church, or you can leave and you can work with the kids outside. And I said, I don't need to pray about it. I walked out.
Wow. Because you knew that your heart was for the lost. Your heart was for the kids outside.
They knew that this was the only family. The kids knew, I knew, and there was no choice. Like I knew that they needed me and I needed them. That's what the family of God is all about.
You're such an amazing guy. Oh my goodness. Have you kept in touch with any of these kids? Yeah. Any success stories that have come out of that? What have they done after?
There's 2 of them that were my very first youth ministry that are missionaries over in Africa. And they got married to amazing women, and they play guitar over in Africa, which is not like normal.
Way.
But
so
like
you helped some kids that weren't allowed to even be in church, and now they're playing guitar, ministering in Africa.
Yeah.
Come on, high five to that one. Look at that fruit. Yeah. That is such a great message because Jesus is outside the 4 walls of the church a lot. Proud of you for standing your guns and saying, nope, I'm not saying at the church then.
That's right. I
hope that's a message to a lot of people at church that maybe, just maybe, they need to expand their vision to outside the walls.
Yeah.
So good. Yeah. Well, that's stuff that you did in the past. What are you doing now?
Yeah, so now I'm focused a lot on coaching. I'm also doing a ministry that is focused on the orphan heart. So I work with foster and adoptive families and am a father figure to people from all over the world.
Okay, well, tell us more about that. That's fabulous.
So the nonprofit, we call it nonprofit because we're going into the schools and going into different places to teach them about trauma and to teach them about why children struggle the way that they do in schools and in society. And it's because of the trauma that they've experienced, either in the lack of a fatherhood home or a perception that they've had in the past. And it's been a struggle for parents even to understand what trauma looks like nowadays, because it's so different than even when we were kids, the understanding of it.
Yeah, so good. Is there a website for that?
Yeah, theorphanedheart.com.
Theorphanheart.com. Okay, because I know people are going to want to check that out, theorphanheart.com. Why'd you call it the Orphan Heart?
Yeah, we called it the Orphan Heart because we see in Isaiah 61 how we are called to take care of the orphan heart. Yeah. We're supposed to take care of the widows. We're supposed to take care of the orphans. And we see that all over the place. We have a ministry set up in Africa, but now we actually moved it from Africa to America. And the orphans are where the struggle is. And if we're going to see in the next move of God, it's going to be with the orphans that are coming to know Christ.
Wow, that's amazing. And the Bible is pretty clear talking about widows and orphans and how important it is for us to take care of them.
Yeah.
So I love, love, love what you're doing. Have you been to Africa?
I have not yet.
Not yet. I like that one. So good. And you mentioned your heart for foster kids.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so a majority of my story is about foster care and about me adopting children. So
you adopted your 3 kids out of foster care. Were you raised
2 boys from foster care, and 1 is my ex-wife's biological daughter.
Okay. And then were you raised in foster care?
I was not. No.
Where did this start with you having this heart for foster kids?
Yeah, the Lord told me at a young age that I was going to be a father to the fatherless.
Stop. What age is a young age?
14.
14. 14. What 14-year-old boy is walking around like, you're going to be a father to the fatherless?
It's not something I really wanted.
I bet. No. Did you try to walk away from that?
I definitely did, yeah. And he just kept on dropping it in my heart.
Wow.
And kept on giving me circumstances to where I couldn't say no.
And then you got married and you decided to foster right away? Yep. Was that something she wanted to do as well?
We had talked about adopting. We weren't able to have children ourselves. And so then it was a struggle. Her wanting to adopt the children or have her own children. And then it came to a point to where I pretty much had to make a choice, because I was also a social worker for 15 years. And so to work...
You were also a social worker for 15 years.
Yeah.
So did that help with giving you a heart for the foster system?
It
because
did.
You saw a lot of the frontline stories?
It did. And the hard part was seeing how the system has failed the families. Not just the biological families, but foster families, the whole system as a whole.
Tell us a little bit more about that, because I don't think most people know that.
Yeah, so a lot of times when children are in need in the system, they will just get lost. They'll be going from foster home to foster home to foster home. And there's all types of different things that happen, the abuse that happens in the foster homes that maybe aren't even believed by the children. There's the human trafficking that we're actually going into the schools and into the police stations and telling them about, like, you have to make sure that you're checking on these things. And there's so many different dynamics that we dive into when it comes to foster care that my Bible says that the church is supposed to be taking care of the orphans and the widows and all of that. Yeah. And so 8 years ago, I actually started a foster care system in the churches and legalized it across the state of Iowa.
Oh my goodness.
Worked along with the state of Iowa.
So good. I'm going to have to pause you right there. That is amazing, working on getting the foster stuff for the... So good. We're going to take a break. We're going to be right back.
Are you traveling long-term internationally? Moving to another country? How's your furry family member going to get there? You won't be able to just buy them a plane ticket. There's a whole series of processes and red tape that no one wants to sift through. You need a partner. You need Doggone Taxi. We take the confusion and headache out of moving your pet to your new country. We take care of the shipping, the fees, the health permits, and anything else that your destination country requires. Visit DoggoneTaxi.com and get your free move quote today. That's DoggoneTaxi.com.
We are back with Devin, and what a story he's talking about. What's the name of your organization?
The Orphan
The
Heart.
Orphan Heart. Wow, he's talking about the Orphan Heart. his heart for foster kids, and then we left off with you talking about how you really felt like the church needed to be more involved, and so you worked on getting the church involved in the foster care system. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so since I'd worked in the foster care system with the church, or with the state,
Yeah.
I ended up taking that exact same replication, but putting it into the churches. So instead of paying foster homes and all these other agencies, we just empowered the churches to open up their homes. And we got it legalized to where we had insurance to be able to cover that. And then we brought in families to be able to make meals and to do transportation. Really, the church being the hands and feet like we're supposed to be.
Yeah, like we're supposed to be. What improvements specifically did you see with the children?
Yeah, so one of the problems that we saw with the church was that people were loving the children and then giving up. So like when the kids have to go back, that's what the main goal of foster care is, that they go back with their families. And so when they were doing that as foster parents, the system, they weren't understanding that they had to give those children back. But now when they were doing it through the church, they saw it in a whole different light, that we're doing this as God's calling.
Yeah.
We're bringing the whole family together. And so we saw this different type of love to where it was really unconditional love because they didn't have the focus of, I'm going to adopt these kids, because it wasn't an option.
Yeah.
And so it was, I'm going to reunite these kids with their family. And so everybody was working together rather than all these different places trying to do the same type of thing. We're all on the same team.
So good, so good. Before we get to your miracle story, I want to touch base on, you mentioned as a social worker, you mentioned trafficking connected with that kind of stuff. And I think a lot of people think that, well, hopefully more people are having their eyes open that trafficking in this country is not a conspiracy theory. It's not something that happens just only in other countries. It happens here, it's prevalent, and you hear of the stories of it happening in the foster system. But you as a social worker of how many years?
15 years.
15 years are saying, yes, it's true.
Yes, absolutely, it's true. And we and the police force knew where the trafficking homes were and would do everything we could to be able to find who the higher-ups were.
Wow.
And those were the hard things, is because we knew where some of the kids were and where some of the places were where the kids were being at, but we needed to be able to find the higher-ups or we would lose everything.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Working with the police force. Now let me ask you this question. For every house that maybe you did know, is there a house you didn't?
Oh, double, triple.
And is Iowa special, or do you think this kind of stuff's happening in every state?
You know, you would think that it wouldn't happen in Iowa because there's nothing but cornfields in Iowa. But absolutely, if it happens in Iowa, it happens anywhere, especially in the small towns, because it's hidden.
Since we're hitting trafficking, which you know is a huge cause in my heart, it's a huge cause of Fear into Faith. It's something that we raise money at for every single one of our events. We always do panels of what trafficking is and what it isn't. We're always about educating people. What would you say to somebody who's watching right now, because my dad, he's in his 70s. Really just a couple of years ago when I was talking to my dad about firsthand stories of, Dad, I went into a brothel. I went and did ministry work. He was freaking out. He's like, what do you mean there's brothels in Florida? I thought there was only brothels in Las Vegas. What would you say to somebody if they're watching right now and they're like, wait, are you kidding me? Land of the free, home of the brave, like this really is happening? What would you say to somebody if they want to maybe go research what you're saying to see for themselves? Would you send them to a website? What would you suggest?
I would suggest talking to the local officials because they actually do know a lot more than what they allow the public to know.
Wow.
A lot of the stuff has to stay hidden because otherwise it's too, a lot of their information has to stay hidden. Otherwise the people will go into hiding.
Wow, wow. I mean, what, you just walk up to the police department, hey, I just have a question. Is trafficking real? And then see what they say.
I honestly, I would set up an appointment with like the chief of police, with the sheriff.
Oh, because you can.
Because you can.
I think people don't realize that you can actually do that in your own hometown. And you can actually go and set up an appointment with your mayor, too, in your own hometown. I think people don't know that.
You can ask them all those types of questions, and they want to be able to share it. They just got to make sure it's going into the right hands and safe hands.
Wow. Unreal. I would never have thought to do that. So you've challenged me. I want to go talk to the chief of police now. All right, let's get a little into your miracle story here. You talked about being a dad to foster kids. Now, were those the only kids that you fostered, or did you do more before that?
Yeah, so we did have 3 other kids before that. They lasted 2 days each, and then they ripped them from our house.
2 days?
Yeah.
Why?
Because I was also a social worker, and so they said that it crossed lines.
Cross lines. So how did the other 2 end up not crossing the line then?
We had the 2 boys that came, and they had been in foster care for a year prior, and so they were from almost 2 hours away. And so because that was outside of where I was working, my jurisdiction, they were allowed to stay longer.
Okay. And were they brothers?
They were brothers, same mom, different dads.
Same mom, different dads. How old were they when you
They
got
were
them?
2 and 1.
2 and 1.
Yeah, super cute.
2 and 1 and super cute.
Yeah.
Okay. And let's start to unpack and unfold this miracle story. I know part of it has to do with one of your kids.
Yep. So we ended up getting divorced after 5 years of having all the kids. And then 2 years after that, my ex-wife kicked one of our children out of the house because of his physical and aggression problems that he had.
And how old was he?
He was 9 at that time.
9.
9.
9 kicked out of the house, like live on the street?
Like in the dead of winter, kicked him physically out of the house. No shoes, no socks, nothing.
And so what did you do?
And so I went over and picked him up and took him to my house. And we had 50-50, so it's not like he wasn't over there a lot. But then his aggression continued to get worse. As you can imagine, losing a family member and then losing his family and now losing his mom that said was going to be his forever home was very hard on him. So he ended up acting out aggressively, and we would go into like physical restraints like 3 or 4 times a week. And
3 or 4 times a week you had to physically restrain him, this 9-year-old.
between 12 to 30 minutes each time.
Just for him to calm down? And
just to calm down.
Wow.
And it was literally like a flip of a switch to where he would just explode and then shut off.
Wow, that's part of that trauma stuff that you're talking about.
Yeah.
So then how long did this go on? What happened next?
Yeah, so we ended up having this problem for about 5 years. So my other children ended up all having to go live with my ex-wife, and I took him on one-on-one.
Because they couldn't be around him.
Because they couldn't be around him because of
Wow.
his behaviors. And
So then you weren't seeing your other kids anymore? So you just focused on this one kid, kind of like Jesus leaving the 99?
Exactly.
Did you just feel like he just needed you, or?
Yeah, everybody kept on saying that he was a monster. Everybody kept on saying that we couldn't be around. We ended up losing most of our friends. Our family wouldn't come around anymore just because of his behaviors. And for me, it took a little while, but I began to understand that it was his heart that I was seeing. It was truly who he was. And because of that, I was able to see the behaviors as just behaviors and to see him as a person. So when he would get aggressive, restraint, let him go, and we'd be done. And we ended up spending about $50,000 trying to get help from across the nation. We worked with the Amen Clinic, and that's a nationally well-known place that I think you
Yeah,
are
I've been
aware
there.
of.
I know that place well. That's a story for another day. I had lots of seizures and ended up in the Amen Clinic myself. Yeah.
Yep. So we ended up working with them, and then God told me that I needed to move. If I wanted to get him the help that we needed to move. And so I sold everything and ended up moving, and then things got worse.
And then we're going to take a break right in the moments where things are getting worse. We're going to take a break, and we'll come back right where we left off. I promise. We'll see you right after this.
Did you know that most skincare products today have low-quality ingredients that can end up doing more harm than good? Sofiel's pure, natural ingredients hydrate, exfoliate, and nourish your skin. Most people see results in one application. Our patented skincare formula contains only the highest quality, natural, plant-based ingredients, so pure you can eat them.
Your skin deserves the best.
Go to shopsofiel.com and use code SOUL20 to save 20%. Get started today.
If you want to know how to get a seat at the table and keep it, check out A Moment in a Boardroom right here on Zandra TV.
There's always room at the table for everyone, so don't fear. Come and join us here at the boardroom.
We are back, my friend, and Devin, you win for the biggest cliffhanger. You're like, we moved, and then it got worse. So we got to hear what happened. How did it get worse?
Yeah, so for over the next year, we didn't know anybody when we moved. And we ended up trying to find people that would be able to help us with his aggression, with his trauma, with his mental health. And everybody kept on just pushing us aside. So the police ended up getting involved. And every single week they would come over and just check on us and help with the restraint holds and really start to document more of what was happening. And the judges wouldn't help. And so ultimately he ended up having a knife in his room one night. And I knew that he had it. I had made my mistake of not watching well enough, and he was threatening to kill me. And we called the police. They came. They took us both to the hospital. And the
How
next
old was he at this time?
13.
13-year-old son wanting to kill you, and his aggression and his pain and his hurt.
Next thing I knew, I woke up 8 hours later at the hospital.
In the hospital. Did you black out?
I did. The last thing I remember is on the way there, they asked me what had happened.
And then you blacked out
And then I blacked out.
and woke up and they said, hey, you've been asleep for 8 hours.
They said, you've been out, we don't know what's wrong. And so they ended up contacting the Amen Clinic, seeing in my records, and they shared the things that had happened in the past, that my brain and my nervous system stopped communicating.
Your brain and nervous system stopped communicating. What was going on?
So because of the trauma that I had endured trying to take care of my son, it had basically almost killed me.
What was going on with the trauma?
So because I was so hyper vigilant
Yeah.
all the time, I never slept.
You never slept.
Never could sleep because I had cameras going on all the time, never knew what he was going to do throughout the night. And so I ended up having to do anything I could in order to take care of him.
I have never heard of anybody going that far for another human being, ever. Like how does somebody function on no sleep for that amount of time? You're just not even sleeping. And so what's next? What did the doctors say was going on with you?
Yep, so they then tried to put me into a mental health institute. And I said, no, it's not gonna happen. I fought for 5 years for my son to get into one. I'm not.
Wow.
And so they ended up telling me that, you can go back and live with your friends or your family, but you're on 18 out of 24 hours bed rest, and you're not gonna make it past 3 months.
They said you're gonna die.
They gave me 3 months left to live.
3 months to live because of what had happened in your system, and they wanted you to sleep 18 hours a day. So then where'd you go?
So I ended up, my friends came and picked me up. I stayed at my friend's house, and we would have a conversation. Literally after 5 minutes of conversation, I would collapse on the floor. They would pick me up, carry me back to my bed.
Wow, so the doctor wasn't saying that stuff to scare you. It was really happening.
It was real.
And then where was your son?
My son ended up going to a shelter for about 6 months until
my
he got
goodness.
put into a placement.
So your son went into a shelter. That must have just absolutely hurt your heart. And you are now trying to sleep 18 hours a day. I mean, are you feeling like this is the end for you?
Yeah, I was basically laying in my bed just saying, God, I'm done. My son's taken care of. My kids are okay with their mom. I'm done. I can't do this anymore.
Wow.
And it was at that point to where I was laying in my bed at my friend's house, and through the door, I don't know if it was in person, I don't know how it was, but I saw Jesus, I felt Jesus come into the door.
Literally seeing Jesus
Seeing
coming
Jesus
into the door.
come into the door,
Wow.
around the bed, right to the side of me. And he said, it's not time for you to go yet.
Wow, it's not time for you to go. And then what happened?
He said, you still have an assignment still to fulfill here. And I need you to be able to pass on your legacy onto other people. And I've deposited into you the Father's heart. And because of that, I now am going to call you the grave digger.
The grave digger.
Grave digger, yeah. And so he said, I'm going to anoint you just the same as we did with Lazarus, to raise people from the dead, and to do it from the physical, emotional, and to pull out the psychological out of them so that they can live life and life abundantly.
Wow. Oh
And
my
then there was that
gosh.
huge capture where the Lord said, but. You know that word, but, means everything I said beforehand. Yeah. He said that it's not going to just be a quick miracle. It's going to take, you're going to have to go through the process so that way you can help people on the other side.
Wow.
And so I went on a 3-month journey.
3-month journey. And, they talk about authority comes from experience. So Jesus shows up and basically tells you, look, you're going to have authority over these things. We're going to call you the grave digger, but you're going to have to walk it out. So what happened in your 3-month journey?
Yeah, so I ended up staying at the house there for another month, and then I went into a cabin out in the wilderness.
Cabin out in the wilderness. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and I spent my time walking and just reading and just writing down everything that I felt the Lord saying.
And how long were you at this cabin?
I was at it for another 3 months.
3 months alone in a cabin. Man, you probably had a lot more Jesus moments in those
There was a
3
lot
months.
of Jesus moments, yeah.
Amazing, amazing. Were you still sleeping a lot?
I was sleeping an awful lot, yes.
Yeah.
And God would speak to me through my dreams. I mean, it was like the only way sometimes that he could seemingly speak to me was through my dreams because I was just sleeping.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then taking it and writing it down and now being able to help and pour into other people to help them understand that every person is a person. Yeah. Every child is a child, and not their behaviors, not what you see them doing.
Yeah.
There's something very special inside of everybody.
I love it. Say that again.
Yeah, there's something very special inside of everybody.
So good. It's so good. Can you please teach the whole world that? There's something very special inside of everybody. It's a great message. So what happened after you're in a cabin, 3 months, and then what?
Yeah, ended up going back to the same hospital, doing a recheck, and they couldn't find anything wrong with me.
Stop. Yeah. You go back and they're like, we can't find anything wrong with you. They're probably shocked you're alive because they gave you 3 months to live.
Yep.
What did the doctor say?
Yeah, the doctor just had utter amazement. He's like, I don't know what to tell you except for this is a miracle.
Wow, so the doctor even says this is a miracle. So incredible. Okay, then what's next?
At that moment, I knew that God had called me to something amazing.
Yeah.
And so I just began following and just being strictly obedient to connecting with the right people and falling into straight alignment with who the Lord had me to connect with. And through that, it was just an ability to be able to pour that Father's heart into everybody that I came into contact with, and to just love them where they're at and not leave them there, but help them to be able to continue to move forward.
So good. You really do have the Father's heart. I see why. I didn't know you spent, maybe you told me before, but I forgot, but like you spent 3 months in a cabin, just you and Jesus. That's incredible. Most people will never have an experience like that in their life. Everyone who's watching is like, yes, but then what happened with your son? We've got about 2 minutes left, so we got to wrap this up. What happened with your son?
Yeah, so my son is still in a treatment facility. And a lot of people maybe don't understand, but it is honestly the best thing for him.
Yeah.
And he is doing amazing there. And I'm doing amazing. He's about 15 minutes away from me, so we get to spend a lot of time together.
So
and
good.
It's really amazing to see him going through this same healing type of process, just in a different way that I didn't expect. But God promised me that he would take care of him if we moved, and he is.
So good, so good. So he's able to get the help he needs. You're still able to see him, still able to be in his life. So that's a stable constant. And then what about your other kids?
Yeah, so my daughter, who I didn't talk to for years, ended up coming back about 2 years later,
So good.
or 2 years ago. Came back 2 years ago, and now she lives with me as a 19-year-old.
Oh, she's living with you. God redeeming that relationship.
Yeah. And so again, it's another story of just the Father's heart of I loved her even when things didn't make sense for her, and I had to trust God that he was going to take care of her and that she would come back.
Wow.
And here she is.
You, my friend, walk in a lot of grace. You walk in a lot of grace. What would you share with somebody that they struggle to do that?
It's first off, I would say it's finding that grace. Finding that grace that you do walk in. You know, is it a fathering? Is it a mothering? Is it just helping other people? What is that? And what do you do really well? And what do you feel like God is just pushing you to and helping you be able to do that? And then go all out. If you don't go all out in it, he's going to remove it. He's going to give it to somebody else, or he's going to expunge it because you're not utilizing the grace of the gifts that he has given you.
Yeah. Go all out. Okay, last question. Foster care. Do you think more people should do it?
Absolutely. I mean, if we're going to talk about not having abortion, we got to have other options. And so if we're not going to help take care of the kids, then we need to make a choice. You can't be neither or.
So good, so good. Well, you, my friend, are truly an incredible man. What a heart you have for this world. What a heart you have for orphans, foster kids, all of that stuff. I'm so grateful for you to be in this book. I'm grateful to know the grave digger. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And I just pray whatever you're walking through, that you would be inspired by Devin's story, that you would be inspired to go all out with your life, to go all out with your calling. And I just pray for you right now, friend, that God will come alongside of you and give you the grace and give you the measure that you need to get through that season, just like he did with Devin. We'll see you next time.